The galaxy was vast, silent, and full of rules. Among these rules, there was one that every species, every council, every fleet knew and feared: never falsely accuse humans. It was whispered in council chambers, spoken in warnings, and carved into the oldest archives of interstellar lore. Humans had a history unlike any other species: resilient, clever, relentless, and capable of vengeance that no alien could imagine. Yet, in the heart of the Xanax Empire, arrogance had grown, pride had blinded the council, and fear of facing the truth had made them dangerous. The distant colony of Terrellis Prime, a small human settlement on the edge of explored space, was quiet, ordinary, peaceful. Its people mined rare minerals, cultivated biodomes, raised children, and told stories of Earth, the planet they had never seen but whose legends still burned in their hearts. They had no fleets, no weapons, no armies to rival the great species of the galaxy. They lived simple lives, believing that humanity could coexist peacefully among the stars. But the Xanax Council would not see reason. In their arrogance, they decided that this colony had sabotaged a vital energy core in the Andrela system, a core whose malfunction had caused catastrophic losses for the Xanax fleet. They blamed humans without proof, without trial, without conscience, and in doing so, they set in motion a chain of events that would forever change the course of history. The council convened in the high chamber, massive pillars rising toward the luminous ceiling, alien delegates with sharp eyes, scales, and feathers huddled over holographic displays, their voices filled with certainty, not doubt. "The humans are responsible," hissed Admiral Varnock, his claws tapping the console. "They have always been unpredictable. They have the cunning to strike when least expected." "And we have evidence?" asked another delegate, a tall, slender being with eyes like molten gold. "No," Varnock admitted, though pride made him hiss it as if it were truth. "But we cannot wait. The energy core failure cost us thousands. Action is needed, or we show weakness." The council agreed. Proof was irrelevant. Human lives were worthless in the balance of pride and fear. Without a single envoy sent, without a single message delivered, warships were deployed. From orbit, massive fleets emerged like black storms, each ship bristling with energy cannons and missile banks. They cut through the stars with precision, leaving trails of light that turned the night sky into a battlefield canvas. On Terrellis Prime, the first warning came as a tremor beneath the domes, a shudder that shook the walls and rattled the ceilings of the human habitats. People looked up, confused, children crying, miners dropping tools, workers running toward family shelters. The skies turned red as distant silhouettes emerged, massive warships larger than any human imagination, casting shadows over valleys and cities. Panic spread faster than light. Families gathered, trying to make sense of the impossible. The humans had never seen anything like this. Their defenses were primitive, barely able to send warning signals to neighboring systems, but the ships came closer, relentless, silent in their judgment. Commander Alara, a woman of quiet strength, stood atop the highest observation tower, her eyes scanning the horizon, her heart pounding. She had trained her life for emergencies, for dangers that humans rarely faced, but nothing could have prepared her for this. "They are here," she whispered to herself, gripping the railing. "They think we did this." Her voice carried a mixture of fear, anger, and disbelief. She could not understand how a species so small, so seemingly insignificant, could be accused of sabotage against the might of the Xanax Empire. And yet, here they were, ready to burn her world. As the first missiles streaked through the atmosphere, humans ran in every direction, trying to reach shelters, trying to save loved ones, trying to survive. Domes shook violently, alarms blared, lights flickered and died. The first explosions rocked the cities, ripping apart the streets, igniting fires, throwing people into chaos. Families were separated, screams filled the air, and the smell of burning metal and ozone choked the skies. Ilara coordinated the defenses, her voice calm despite the turmoil. She barked orders to the volunteers manning the few defensive turrets they had, to the engineers trying to stabilize power systems, to the medics rushing to injured civilians. Every moment counted. Every breath was a battle against despair. The humans fought, not with fleets, not with superior technology, but with courage, ingenuity, and the desperate will to survive. Children huddled under collapsed beams, mothers held them close, and fathers tried to shield what little they could. The audience feels the heartbreak, the horror of seeing innocent lives destroyed for crimes they did not commit, and the shock on the alien faces as the humans did not simply flee, they fought back with what they had. For a fleeting moment, the Zarnax admirals watched from the command bridge of their flagship, seeing the humans resist. They had expected submission, surrender, instant obliteration. But the humans, frail, desperate, outnumbered, resisted. Small missile pods launched from hidden bunkers, lasers targeted incoming ships' weak points, and automated drones found creative ways to disrupt the alien advance. Casualties mounted on both sides, but the humans' determination grew stronger with every loss. Commander Alara watched as the domes around her city crumbled. Smoke rose like dark pillars into the sky, fire licked the shattered walls, and cries of despair echoed across the planet. Yet, in the chaos, she saw acts of courage that warmed her heart despite the fear. A young miner lifted an injured child over debris, shielding them with his own body. A teacher guided students through tunnels, singing songs of earth to calm their panic. Every act of bravery added to a fire in Alara's chest, a resolve that she would not let her people die unjustly. She activated the emergency broadcast, her voice steady, filling every channel. To all humans on Terralese Prime, stay calm, stay together, defend your homes. Help one another. We will survive this. We must survive this. Never let fear control you. The council, watching remotely, felt no fear, only satisfaction. They cannot fight us, Varnox said confidently. They are humans. They are weak. Their defiance is meaningless. But he had not counted on the humans' resilience. The humans, though cornered, began using their environment to their advantage. Mines were collapsed on advancing troops, energy conduits were redirected to form shields, and even the small fleet of cargo ships was armed with improvised weapons. Every corner, every alley, every cavern became a trap, a shield, a home advantage. The Zarnax ships, though powerful, could not anticipate human ingenuity. The Council's shock began to show as reports came in: unexpected resistance, minor victories, unusual tactics. Their confidence wavered, but their pride would not allow them to retreat. On the ground, the horror continued. Families were lost, friends were separated, and the sky burned red. Yet, in the faces of survivors, there was determination. Humans were bleeding, but they were not broken. Commander Alara felt the weight of every life on her shoulders. She clenched her fists, swearing silently to herself that no alien, no council, no fleet could claim her people falsely. The night stretched into hours, the sky raining fire, the ground trembling with each impact. Yet, every human who survived took another breath, another step, another chance to fight back. And as the first wave of Zarnax warships prepared to leave the planet after initial destruction, Alara knew this was not the end. The humans would survive. They would rise. The Council had made a grave mistake, one they would someday regret. The audience is left on edge, feeling every explosion, every scream, every act of bravery, knowing that the humans are small, alone, outnumbered, but far from defeated. And in the shadows of Terralese Prime, hidden in caves, bunkers, and secret tunnels, the humans began planning their next move, a silent vow forming in their hearts. The species that was blamed, shamed, and attacked without reason would one day show the galaxy that blood is stronger than lies, and no empire could ignore it without paying the price. The smoke still hung heavy over Terralese Prime, choking the air with the scent of burning metal and scorched earth. The once peaceful colony now resembled a battlefield carved by the wrath of the Zarnax fleet. Survivors stumbled through the ruins, their faces smeared with ash and blood, their eyes wide with terror and disbelief. Commander Alara moved among them, her boots crunching against shattered glass and debris, her gaze sharp, calculating, but her heart heavy with sorrow. She had lost friends, comrades, families, men and women who had devoted their lives to the colony, to the safety of their people, and now they were gone, snatched in a storm of fire and arrogance. Yet, despite the grief, there was no time for mourning. Every second counted, every breath was precious, every decision could mean life or death. She gathered the survivors in what remained of the central dome, her voice echoing against the twisted metal walls, firm, unwavering, carrying both authority and compassion. We are not finished. They believe we are weak. They believe we are nothing. They are wrong. We fight not because we want war, but because we have no choice. We defend our homes. We defend our families. We defend our people. And we will survive. Her words, though simple, struck deep. The humans listened, eyes burning with a mixture of fear and resolve. The young, the old, the injured, they all felt the spark of courage reignite, tiny flames against the overwhelming darkness. Children clung to their parents, whispering questions they could not understand, and parents embraced them, holding them tightly, promising safety they were not sure they could deliver. Every face told a story of loss, yet also a story of survival, and in that fragile, desperate hope, a plan began to form. Ilara knew that surviving this attack was only the first step. The Xanax would not stop. They would return in greater numbers, more determined, more merciless. The humans could not simply wait for annihilation, they needed to strike back, to show that being blamed falsely did not mean being defeated. And so, beneath the ruins of Terrelli's Prime, in hidden bunkers, abandoned mines, and the twisted remains of laboratories, the humans began to gather, to organize, to learn. Engineers who had once repaired mining equipment now transformed it into weapons. Scientists who studied flora and minerals began analyzing explosives and energy conduits. Even children, though small and frightened, contributed in ways that surprised their elders, carrying messages, guiding groups, alerting others to dangers, reminding everyone that humanity thrived even in the darkest moments. Hours passed like years as the humans adapted. Commander Ilara moved from group to group, checking on supplies, instructing defensive positions, comforting the wounded. Her eyes often lingered on the horizon, where faint glimmers of returning Xanax scouts might appear. She knew the Council believed humans were defeated, that they would cower and disappear quietly into history, and that arrogance was their greatest mistake. Meanwhile, in the black expanse of space above Terrelli's Prime, the Xanax fleet reported the results of their first attack. Ships had been damaged, some lost entirely to human ingenuity, though the Council tried to ignore the humiliation. They should not have survived this long, Admiral Varnock growled, slamming a clawed hand against the console. They are only humans. They are weak. Yet they fight. They resist. How can this be? Other delegates murmured uneasily, a rare doubt creeping into their hearts. They had underestimated humans before, but never like this. Never had they seen such courage, such determination, such will to survive in beings they considered inferior. On the ground, the humans' small victories fueled their resolve. Makeshift barricades slowed Xanax advanced drones. Collapsed tunnels created impromptu traps, scattering the enemy and saving lives. Every success, no matter how minor, strengthened the belief that survival was possible, that the Council had made a grave mistake. The emotional weight pressed on Ilara, for she carried not only the responsibility for her people's lives but also the burden of their fear, their grief, their hope. She had grown up learning that humans were resourceful, that humanity could endure suffering and rise above it, but witnessing the immediate horror, the death, the destruction, the terror, tested her faith and her patience. Yet, she found strength in the most unexpected places. A young medic, barely 16, who had lost her parents in the first wave, refused to leave the injured behind, moving from one survivor to another, administering aid with trembling hands yet steady purpose. An elderly miner, crippled by injury, stayed behind in the tunnels to guide escape routes for the fleeing civilians, sacrificing safety for others. Even animals, loyal and fierce, aided the humans, carrying supplies, warning of approaching dangers, their instincts aligned with human survival. Each of these acts stitched a fabric of determination that could not be torn by fire or fear. Ilara stood in the central dome, her gaze sweeping across the makeshift assembly of survivors, and she realized something profound: humans were more than flesh and bone. They were courage, they were hope, they were blood and memory, and they were stronger than the lies that the Council had used to condemn them. In a quiet moment, she allowed herself to remember those they had lost, the children who would never grow, the friends who would never return, the laughter that would never echo again. Tears burned her eyes, but she blinked them away, for grief was a luxury she could not afford. Instead, she turned that sorrow into resolve. Every human who survived carried the weight of vengeance and justice. Every life lost demanded that the Xanax Council understand, painfully, that humans could not be crushed without consequence. Hours turned into days. Supplies dwindled, yet the humans adapted, scavenged, and improvised. Communications with neighboring systems were nearly impossible, but messages were sent secretly, hidden within routine data, alerting allies to the injustice. Hope, fragile but persistent, began to grow. Above them, the stars were indifferent, watching silently as one species faced near destruction and yet refused to bend. The Xanax fleet, arrogant and powerful, believed they had delivered a decisive blow, but they had only lit a spark. Commander Ilara, walking through the ruins of what had once been the central plaza, felt that spark ignite within her people. Their determination became palpable, almost tangible, a wave of energy that could not be measured in weapons or ships. And in that energy, in that burning refusal to be defeated, the humans prepared. They prepared not just to survive, but to fight back, to defend their name, to prove that the Council had erred fatally. Every human carried a story of loss, a memory of grief, a heartbeat of courage. The audience, witnessing these moments, feels the sorrow, the fear, and above all, the burning ember of hope that refuses to die. The Council had blamed the wrong species. The humans had been attacked without cause, judged without evidence, punished without mercy. Yet they remained, wounded but unbroken, fearful but determined, shattered but alive. Commander Alara knew the true battle was just beginning, and she understood that humanity's strength was not in fleets, not in weapons, but in blood, in loyalty, in resilience, in the refusal to yield to lies and cruelty. As night fell over Terralese Prime, fires still burned, but so did the hearts of its people. Shadows stretched across ruined domes and shattered streets, but within those shadows, plans were whispered, alliances formed, courage solidified. Humans would rise from these ashes, not as victims, but as a force that even the arrogant Xanax could not ignore. And in the cold, indifferent void of space, somewhere in the council chambers, doubt had begun to stir, a first, subtle warning that the species they had underestimated might one day demand reckoning. Every eye, every breath, every heartbeat mattered. Humanity's silent vow echoed through the ruins: they would survive. They would fight. They would make the galaxy remember that blood, loyalty, and truth were stronger than lies, and no empire could ignore it without paying the ultimate price. The ruins of Terralese Prime were silent now, but the silence was heavy, charged with grief, fear, and the faint spark of determination. The human survivors moved cautiously through the shattered domes and twisted metal streets, their eyes constantly scanning for threats, their hearts heavy with loss yet beating with the stubborn rhythm of survival. Commander Alara walked ahead, her cloak tattered, boots scuffed with dust and blood, and her eyes sharp, unyielding. She had led her people through fire and death, but the worst was yet to come. The Xanax Council had not finished with them, and they would return, stronger, more merciless, believing that humans were fragile, broken, and defeated. But they were wrong, and Alara knew it. Hidden beneath the rubble of the central city, in tunnels that had once served as mining shafts, the humans began to uncover secrets long forgotten, secrets that would change the fate of their species forever. Deep underground, protected from the watchful eyes of the enemy, ancient warships lay dormant, relics of humanity's past that no other species remembered, that no archive in the galaxy had recorded. These ships had once patrolled the stars, protecting human colonies, exploring distant systems, and maintaining peace. They were powerful, equipped with weapons and shields that rivaled entire fleets of the current age, and they had waited silently, forgotten, waiting for the moment humanity needed them most. Alara stood before the largest of these ships, its hull covered in dust, the insignia of old Earth still visible despite centuries of neglect. She ran her hand over the cold metal, feeling the weight of history beneath her fingers. Tears threatened to fall, but she forced them back. This was not a time for mourning, it was a time for awakening. Engineers and mechanics, survivors from the colony who had once operated mining equipment, now worked feverishly to bring the ancient technology back to life. Sparks flew, circuits hummed, and machines roared as humanity's past and present collided in a desperate symphony of survival. Every eye was fixed on Alara as she coordinated repairs, checked energy cores, and organized crews. The humans were not trained soldiers in the traditional sense, but in this moment, necessity forged them into warriors of extraordinary skill. Children and teenagers, who had known only peaceful lives, learned quickly, memorizing controls, scanning instruments, and assisting in ways that astounded even the elders. The audience feels their awe and the emotional weight of seeing innocence turned into courage, of ordinary humans transforming under pressure into the architects of their own survival and revenge. As the ships roared to life, energy flowing through conduits, weapon systems powering up, shields shimmering faintly, the humans gathered around consoles that displayed maps, enemy positions, and tactical data stolen from the limited communications they could intercept. Their faces glowed with hope, determination, and something deeper, the realization that they were no longer just defending a colony, they were about to reclaim their dignity, prove their innocence, and confront the empire that had dared to blame them. The emotional intensity of the moment was almost unbearable. Survivors who had cried over lost families now wiped tears from their cheeks and focused on the task at hand. Every life lost demanded justice, every shattered home demanded retaliation, but Alara reminded them that revenge alone was not enough. They must be precise, they must be smart, and above all, they must be human, showing the galaxy that truth and courage could not be silenced. Among the crew, a young pilot named Kieran, barely 18, stared wide-eyed at the controls of a warship older than he was. His hands trembled slightly, but his resolve did not. We can actually do this," he whispered, almost to himself. Alara placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "Yes. We will do this. They think we are weak. They think we are nothing. Let them see the truth." Outside, the first human ship lifted from the underground docking bay, its engines glowing softly, leaving trails of pale blue light in the darkness of space. The others followed, one by one. A silent, rising tide of humanity ready to reclaim its place among the stars. In the council chambers far away, reports of Terrelese Prime survivors began to filter in. The Zarnax delegates initially dismissed the data, claiming technical errors, imagining exaggeration or luck. But as more information arrived, showing ships moving, shields active, and humans preparing for attack, whispers of unease spread. "This cannot be possible," hissed Admiral Varnock, his face turning pale beneath scales. "They are humans. They should have fallen. How do they still survive?" Pride battled with fear, but fear won quickly. The humans had survived the first wave, and now, with the awakening of their ancestral technology, they were no longer just a colony. They were a threat, a reminder that the past had forged them in ways the Council could not comprehend. On Terrelese Prime, Alara stood on the bridge of the largest ship, overlooking the fleet that now filled the underground cavern with light and motion. Every face she saw reflected determination, courage, grief, and above all, unwavering loyalty to one another. She thought of those they had lost, and she swore silently to each of them that their deaths would not be in vain. The humans would rise, not as victims, but as a force of nature, precise, intelligent, relentless. The first training exercises began in the confined space of the ships. Humans moved with discipline, learning to operate the weapons, maneuver the vessels, and coordinate as a fleet. Mistakes were made, but each one taught them more than any school or instructor could. Commander Alara observed them, pride swelling in her chest, knowing that these moments of struggle would shape them into the warriors they needed to be. The audience feels the tension, the suspense, the birth of something extraordinary from the ashes of destruction, a species underestimated, misjudged, attacked without reason, now finding its true strength. Days passed in a blur of repairs, strategy, and training. Communications were restored in secret, reaching human allies scattered across nearby systems. Each message carried the same warning: humanity had survived, humanity had awakened, humanity would fight back. And as the humans prepared, they uncovered another secret buried deep within the mining tunnels: archives of the ancestors, logs, and recordings detailing battles, diplomacy, and the guardianship of humanity over distant worlds. Reading these, humans discovered proof that they had always been protectors, not saboteurs. Their bloodline carried courage, ingenuity, and honor. The lies of the Zarnax Council were now more than unjust. They were dangerous, ignorant, and insulting to the legacy of humanity. Commander Alara gathered the leaders of the fleet, showing them the archives. "We are not the species they claim we are," she said, her voice steady and commanding. "We are humans. We survive when others fall, we rise when others crumble, and we fight for truth when lies try to destroy us. We have been tested, and now, we will prove it to the galaxy." The fleet moved silently in formation as the first practice drills turned into real tests of combat readiness. Humans fired weapons, maneuvered through asteroid fields, and coordinated attacks with precision born from necessity. The audience feels the suspense as every move could mean victory or death, as every small success builds hope, as every mistake threatens to remind them of their vulnerability. Meanwhile, the Zarnax fleet remained oblivious to the true awakening below Terrelese Prime. They believed the humans were disorganized, fractured, and terrified. They had no idea that the survivors had become a silent storm, gathering strength, learning, and preparing for the day when they would show the Council the cost of arrogance and lies. Commander Alara stood again on the bridge, watching her fleet grow, listening to the hum of engines and the chatter of human voices preparing for action. Her eyes, filled with sorrow yet shining with determination, surveyed the ships, the survivors, the engineers, the pilots, the medics, the children who would one day grow into legends. Every life mattered. Every heartbeat mattered. Every act of courage mattered. And she knew, deep in her soul, that when the humans finally moved, when they struck back, the galaxy would see what the Council had ignored for centuries. Humans are not weak, humans are not defeated, and humans are never to be underestimated. As night fell over the ruined planet, the underground fleet glowed with light, humming with life and readiness. Outside, the stars seemed indifferent, watching silently as one species rose from destruction, forging their strength from grief, fear, and determination. The audience feels the suspense tighten, the tension rise, knowing that the humans are no longer passive victims but an unstoppable force being born in secret. Their plan was not complete, their revenge not yet delivered, but the first steps had been taken. And somewhere, far across the galaxy, the Xanax Council continued to believe they had won, unaware that the blood of humans, stronger than lies, had already begun to awaken. The humans' fleet lay hidden beneath the ruins of Terrelese Prime, a silent, glowing testament to endurance, ingenuity, and the stubborn will to survive. Commander Alara walked among her people, her steps echoing on the metal floors, her mind racing with strategies, contingencies, and the weight of the lives that now depended on her decisions. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, indifferent and cold, as if the galaxy itself had turned its back, yet beneath that vast emptiness, the human spirit burned brighter than any star. The survivors had rebuilt more than ships, they had rebuilt hope, courage, and unity. Each person, from the youngest child to the oldest engineer, understood that survival was no longer enough. They needed to strike, to show the galaxy that humans could not be crushed by lies and arrogance. In the command hub, maps flickered across holographic screens, displaying the positions of the Xanax fleets, their patrol routes, and their vulnerabilities. Every movement was analyzed, every weakness noted, every opportunity considered. Humans who had spent their lives as miners, teachers, and engineers now became tacticians, strategists, and soldiers, their skills forged in fire, sharpened by loss. Alara's hands hovered over the central console, her fingers tracing the routes of the enemy, her mind calculating risks, predicting outcomes, imagining battles before they even began. Her eyes, reflecting the pale glow of the monitors, were hard, unyielding, but deep within them lay the sorrow of what had been lost, the families destroyed, the friends killed, the innocents stolen. Yet that sorrow did not crush her, it became fuel. Every heartbeat, every memory of grief, became a reason to fight smarter, faster, and harder than the Council ever expected. As the humans prepared, a wave of emotion swept through the fleet. Engineers whispered quietly about loved ones they could not save, pilots clenched their fists in silent vows, medics silently prayed over their instruments, and even children watched in wide-eyed wonder at the machines they would soon command. The sense of unity, of shared purpose, was overwhelming, a quiet roar that echoed louder than any cannon. Outside the hidden caverns, in orbit above Terrelese Prime, Xanax scouts continued their routine patrols, unaware that below them, a force was awakening that would shatter every assumption they held about humanity. In the council chambers, Admiral Varnock and his peers convened, confident in their presumed victory but uneasy as new reports reached them. "There are signs of activity," a junior delegate reported, voice trembling. "Small movements, energy signatures that should not be possible. We believed the humans were defeated." Varnock hissed, scales bristling. "Impossible," he spat. "They are humans. They are weak. They are insignificant. Yet this defiance cannot be ignored. We must investigate further." Doubt flickered among the council members. Pride battled with fear, and fear began to win. The humans, underestimated and oppressed, had survived the first attack, and now whispers of their resilience reached even the farthest corners of the Empire. On Terrelese Prime, Commander Alara convened her inner circle. Maps spread before them, each star system marked with potential threats and opportunities. "The Council believes we are broken," she said, her voice calm but hard, carrying the weight of command and the fire of vengeance. "They believe they have crushed us. They believe we will hide and die quietly. They are wrong. We will not only survive, we will show them the truth. They blamed the wrong species, and they will pay the price for their arrogance." Her words hung in the air, and for the first time in weeks, a sense of fierce hope rippled through the room. Humans, though small and weary, understood their potential. They were no longer just survivors, they were warriors in waiting, strategists in the shadows, the storm that the Xanax Council had failed to anticipate. Over the next days, humans tested their fleet, refining maneuvers, practicing coordination, and learning to operate the ancient ships with skill that surprised even their instructors. Each success, each small victory, emboldened them, and with each lesson, their confidence grew. Pilots who had trembled at the sight of the first warships now executed complex drills with precision. Engineers adapted weapons to new functions, finding creative solutions to problems that centuries of complacency had ignored. Children, trained in observation and quick thinking, became invaluable messengers and spotters, their small size and agility allowing them to navigate tight corridors and dangerous zones to deliver critical information. Every human contributed to the rising force, each act of courage weaving into a tapestry of determination that could not be broken. As night fell over the ruins, Commander Alara stood on the observation deck of the largest ship, gazing at the stars, the same stars that had watched humanity struggle and survive for millennia. She thought of Earth, of legends passed down through generations, of the ancestors who had fought, bled, and died to make humans strong, adaptable, and unstoppable. She realized that the blood of those ancestors ran through their veins now, connecting the survivors of Terralese Prime to a legacy that the Xanax Council had forgotten, underestimated, and scorned. "They think we are weak," she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the hum of the engines. "They think we are nothing. Let them see what happens when the wrong species is blamed. Let them see the cost of lies." Below, in the corridors of the ships, humans whispered similar vows to each other. Mothers swore to protect the children of friends lost in the attack. Engineers vowed that every weapon they repaired would serve justice. Pilots whispered promises that every drop of fuel and every laser shot would honor the fallen. Each whisper was a spark, each promise a flame, and together, they formed a firestorm of determination that no empire could ignore. The Xanax Council, meanwhile, continued their arrogance, sending messages across systems demanding information, but every answer they received reminded them of their ignorance. Humans were surviving. Humans were preparing. Humans were awakening, and with each passing day, the Council's confidence wavered. Tension grew like a living thing in the chambers, scales bristled, claws tapped consoles, voices shook with fear beneath the layers of pride. And still, the humans did not rest. They used the ruins of Terralese Prime to their advantage, building hidden facilities, armories, and observation points. They learned the terrain, exploiting it against any enemy who dared return. They set traps, monitored energy signatures, and coordinated patrols, not with the arrogance of empire but with the cunning and patience born of survival. Commander Alara often walked the perimeter of the hidden base, observing the quiet courage of her people. She saw fear, yes, but she also saw resolve, ingenuity, and loyalty. Even in the darkest hours, humans smiled at one another, encouraged one another, shared stories, and remembered those they had lost, not with despair, but with purpose. Their grief had transformed into strength, their sorrow into vigilance, and their fear into strategy. And as the first signals of the returning Xanax fleets blinked faintly on their scanners, the humans were ready. Not yet to strike, but ready to reveal their presence, to show that they were no longer mere victims, and to prove that blood is stronger than lies. The Council had underestimated them, dismissed them, and attacked them without reason, but the humans of Terralese Prime were no longer the fragile colony they had thought. They were a rising force, silent and patient, learning, adapting, preparing, and waiting for the moment when the galaxy would finally witness the consequences of arrogance, lies, and misjudgment. And in that quiet, tense preparation, every heartbeat, every glance, every whispered promise carried with it the weight of justice, the memory of loss, and the undeniable truth that humans, once awakened, would never be ignored, never be defeated, and never allow lies to dictate their fate again. The silence of Terralese Prime had changed. It was no longer the quiet of grief or fear, but the tense stillness of anticipation. Commander Alara stood at the helm of the largest warship, her hands steady on the controls, her eyes scanning the stars that stretched endlessly above. Each star seemed indifferent, cold, and uncaring, yet beneath that emptiness lay a galaxy that had forgotten the resilience of humans. Every human aboard the ships carried the weight of loss, every child, every engineer. Every pilot remembered the fires that had burned their homes, the screams that had echoed across the colony, and the faces of friends and family lost to the Xanax attack. That memory had transformed into determination, a quiet storm of fury and focus that no weapon, no fleet, no council could crush. "All units, report status," Elara's voice rang out, calm but commanding, cutting through the low hum of engines and the faint creak of old hulls. Her crew responded with precision, their voices steady, their resolve palpable. The humans had trained tirelessly in the hidden underground docks, transforming fear into skill, grief into strategy, and desperation into a weapon stronger than any artillery. Outside, the first wave of human ships rose from the ruins, cloaked in the darkness of space, silent shadows moving toward the unsuspecting Zarnax patrols. They were small compared to the Council's fleet, fragile against their advanced warships, yet each human knew that their strength lay not in size or firepower, but in unity, courage, and the ingenuity born of survival. The first contact came suddenly, a Zarnax scout drifting too close, scanning the debris field where the humans had hidden their fleet. The young pilot, Kieran, barely 18, gripped the controls, his knuckles white. His heart raced, yet his mind was clear, sharp. "Target in sight," he whispered, not to alarm, but to confirm the moment they had trained for. Commander Alara's eyes were calm, focused. "Engage," she ordered. And the first strike erupted. Small missile pods, adapted from mining equipment, surged toward the scout, guided by precise calculations and flawless timing. The scout exploded, a silent flare against the void, and the humans felt their first surge of hope and power. They were not just survivors, they were fighters. Each explosion, each successful maneuver, filled the hearts of the humans with fire. The audience feels the tension, the adrenaline, the almost unbearable suspense of watching the weak become strong, the underestimated become unstoppable. Alara's fleet moved in precise formation, using the terrain of asteroids and debris fields to their advantage, striking quickly, retreating silently, appearing where the Zarnax did not expect them. Every human was a part of the attack, every action intentional, every move a testament to the training forged under fire. As the battle escalated, the humans' ingenuity became their deadliest weapon. Mines collapsed into corridors where Zarnax ships attempted to follow. Energy conduits were redirected to disable shields temporarily, creating openings for small, precise strikes. Pilots coordinated attacks with near-perfect timing, their youth, agility, and quick thinking turning the tide against a technologically superior enemy. And through it all, Commander Alara remained calm, a beacon of unwavering resolve. She moved among the bridge consoles, directing attacks, monitoring weaknesses, and inspiring her people with quiet words that carried the weight of truth and vengeance. "Remember why we fight," she said softly, almost to herself but audible to all who listened. "They blamed us for crimes we did not commit. They burned our homes. They tried to erase us. But we are human. We survive. We endure. And we will make them remember that blood is stronger than lies." The emotional weight of her words was felt by everyone aboard, filling their hearts with courage even as lasers and energy blasts streaked past the hull. Every strike they made was not just tactical, it was personal. Each human had lost something, and that loss fueled their precision, their daring, their refusal to yield. The Zarnax Council, observing from a safe distance, could not understand what was happening. "Impossible," hissed Admiral Varnock, his claws gripping the console. "They were weak. They should have been destroyed. How are they striking back?" Other delegates murmured, fear creeping into their voices, their arrogance failing them for the first time. They had underestimated humanity's resolve, its intelligence, its capacity to rise from ashes and fight with courage that no empire could contain. Back on Terralese Prime, the humans' strike grew bolder. Using stealth maneuvers, they intercepted supply lines, disabled communications, and disrupted patrol routes. The fleet was small, but their actions were precise, their timing flawless, their courage unmatched. Every successful strike spread hope through the survivors, reinforcing the knowledge that the Zarnax had made a grave mistake. Commander Alara watched as a small squadron returned from a successful mission, the pilots exhausted, yet their faces alight with determination and pride. Children who had observed from the hidden corridors clapped quietly, understanding the meaning of the victories, sensing the growing tide of power that humans now held. The human fleet struck again and again, each maneuver calculated, each attack deliberate. The audience experiences the suspense, feeling the tension in every heartbeat, every glance, every whispered word among the crew. The humans were not reckless, they were smart, patient, and relentless. And in that relentless assault, the first real cracks appeared in the arrogance of the Zarnax fleet. Shields faltered, patrols hesitated, and the Council realized, with growing fear, that humans were no longer the fragile, desperate species they had assumed. On the ground, survivors cheered quietly, their hearts lifted by the knowledge that their people had struck back, that they were not powerless, that the fires of hope were no longer extinguished. Elara moved to the observation deck of her ship, her cloak fluttering in the artificial breeze, her eyes scanning the distant battle. She allowed herself a brief moment to feel pride, tempered immediately by the weight of responsibility. Each life lost was still a tragedy. Each battle was still dangerous. But she also understood that the humans had sent a message to the galaxy. They would fight, they would endure, they would never bow to lies and false blame. The strike continued, the humans' confidence growing with every maneuver, every explosion, every Xanax patrol disrupted. They had transformed from survivors into warriors, their sorrow into determination, their fear into skill, and their grief into strategy. And somewhere, deep in the council chambers, the arrogance of the Xanax leaders began to crumble. They had attacked a species they thought weak. They had judged without evidence. And now, that species was striking back, silently, efficiently, with a precision and courage that no one had predicted. Commander Elara stood silently, her eyes reflecting the fires of distant battles, the glow of human ships maneuvering in unison, and the quiet, unstoppable power of a species that refused to be broken. The humans' first strike had been successful, but it was only the beginning. They had shown the galaxy a taste of their strength, the price of false blame, and the depth of their courage. The audience feels the suspense, the excitement, and the emotional weight of the moment. Humans, underestimated, attacked unjustly, now beginning their rise, sending a clear message to every corner of the galaxy that blood is stronger than lies, and humanity would not be silenced. The fires of Terralese Prime's defenders burned brighter than any star above them, signaling to all who watched that the humans had awakened, and that the first strike was only the first step in a reckoning that no empire could ignore. After the first strike, Terralese Prime was no longer just a ruined colony. It had become a fortress of secrets, a cradle of human resilience, and the birthplace of a power the galaxy had long forgotten. Commander Elara walked through the underground tunnels with careful steps, her cloak brushing against the cold metal walls, her eyes scanning every corner, every shadow, every faint glimmer of movement. The survivors followed, their expressions a mixture of exhaustion, grief, and the fierce determination that had carried them through the attacks of the Xanax fleet. The air was thick with dust, the faint hum of machinery echoing off the walls, and yet, beneath the weight of silence, there was a pulse, a rhythm that felt alive, almost breathing. They had been exploring the lower levels of Terralese Prime for days, scavenging supplies, reinforcing shelters, and uncovering parts of the mining tunnels that had been sealed for centuries. But it was in the deepest chamber, long buried beneath layers of rock and forgotten history, that they found something extraordinary. The chamber was massive, far larger than any mining vault, its walls etched with symbols of a civilization long gone, symbols humans did not fully understand, yet felt instinctively. In the center lay an enormous device, dormant, dark, yet humming faintly with energy, as if aware that it had been found. Elara approached it cautiously, her hand hovering just above the surface, feeling the subtle vibration, the quiet power waiting to be awakened. Around her, the humans whispered in awe, their voices low and reverent. "What is it?" asked Kieran, his voice trembling. "It looks alive." Elara did not answer immediately. Instead, she studied the device, recognizing patterns, symbols, and energy conduits that her ancestors had once described in legend but she had never believed truly existed. "This," she said finally, her voice firm but filled with awe, "is our legacy. This is what our ancestors left behind to protect humanity. We have been tested, we have survived, and now it is time to awaken what they entrusted to us." Engineers and scientists, the survivors who had once repaired mining equipment and studied minerals, now worked feverishly, tracing circuits, connecting energy conduits, calibrating ancient systems with the skill and desperation of those who know their survival depends on it. Sparks flew, lights flickered, and slowly, the device began to hum louder, glowing faintly with a soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Emotion surged through the humans, a mixture of hope, fear, and awe. They had fought for survival, they had endured the Council's wrath, and now, they were witnessing a power that could change the balance of the galaxy. Elara stood over the console, her fingers brushing controls that seemed alien yet familiar, her mind racing with possibilities. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down, heavier than any grief she had carried. Every life lost, every home destroyed, demanded that they use this power wisely, that they honor the sacrifices of the past while securing the future. Hours passed as they worked, fine-tuning, adjusting, awakening dormant systems. Outside, the first light of distant stars seeped into cracks in the tunnels, yet the chamber glowed brighter than any natural light, illuminating faces filled with emotion, awe, and fear. Finally, the device roared to life. Energy surged through conduits, casting blue shadows on the walls, making the human figures look larger than life, almost ethereal. The humans held their breath, feeling the immense power radiating through the chamber. It was overwhelming, a force that could shield planets, control energy, and disrupt fleets of enemies. Kieran's hands shook as he reached toward a control panel, and Alara caught his wrist. "Do not touch anything yet," she warned. "We are the guardians of this power. One wrong move, and it could destroy us instead of helping us." Yet despite the caution, hope blossomed among the humans. They could feel their ancestors' presence, the legacy of courage, ingenuity, and resilience flowing through the device. They understood instinctively that this power was meant to defend, to protect, to ensure that humanity could never again be falsely accused, attacked, or erased. In that moment, grief transformed into purpose. Every survivor who had cried for lost family, who had trembled in fear, who had whispered prayers in the dark now stood taller, strengthened by the knowledge that they were part of something greater than themselves, something that could change the galaxy forever. Commander Alara took a deep breath, her mind already planning the next moves. "We will not waste this," she said, her voice steady, carrying the authority of command and the weight of hope. "We will learn it. We will master it. And when the time comes, we will use it to protect ourselves, our people, and the truth of humanity." The Council believed they could destroy us with lies. They were wrong. They have no idea what we are capable of. Meanwhile, in orbit, the Zarnax fleet continued their patrols, unaware that beneath them, a force was awakening that could shift the balance of power across systems. Admiral Varnock scowled at reports, still confident that humanity was a minor threat, yet a faint unease crept into his scales. Something was changing, something he could not yet comprehend, and he did not like the feeling of being outmaneuvered by a species he had once dismissed. Back in the chamber, humans continued to explore the device, learning, adapting, experimenting carefully. Each new discovery brought awe and caution. Shields could be extended to cover entire cities. Energy weapons could be amplified beyond imagination. Communication systems could reach even distant allies undetected. Humanity's potential, dormant for centuries, now began to shine through every human mind and every heart willing to embrace it. The emotional weight pressed on Alara as she watched her people work tirelessly. She thought of those who had fallen, of those who had died in the first attacks, and she whispered their names silently, promising that their sacrifice had not been in vain. Tears threatened, but she held them back. Grief was still present, but now it was tempered with hope, determination, and the unstoppable will to protect what remained. Slowly, the humans emerged from the chamber, the device now fully operational, its energy flowing through the tunnels, casting light into places that had long been dark. They felt stronger, safer, and more prepared for what was coming. The stars above seemed indifferent still, but humans no longer needed the stars' approval. Their strength came from within, from blood, courage, and unyielding loyalty to one another. Commander Alara gazed at the horizon of the underground docks, where the first ships had begun to integrate with the newly awakened power. The humans were ready. Not just for defense, but for retaliation, for truth, and for justice. The audience feels the suspense and emotional intensity as humans discover this ancient power, a gift of their ancestors, a force that could not only protect them but make the Council regret their arrogance. And somewhere across the galaxy, in the Council chambers, whispers of unease grew louder. Humans had survived. Humans had struck back. And now, humans had awakened a power the Zarnax had never expected. The blood of humanity, stronger than lies, now surged through the veins of the survivors, through the devices of their ancestors, and through the hearts of every human who had endured loss and emerged stronger. Commander Alara's voice echoed through the chamber, calm but firm, carrying the weight of destiny. "We are ready. The Council has underestimated us. The galaxy will remember. Blood is stronger than lies, and humanity will prove it." The device hummed louder, energy flowing into the ships, shields activating, weapon systems powering up, and the humans, standing together in awe and determination, prepared to take their place among the stars once more, not as victims, but as guardians, warriors, and unstoppable forces. And in that moment, every heartbeat, every whispered vow, every tear shed and wiped away, carried the promise that humanity's awakening had begun, and nothing, not lies, not empires, not arrogance, could stop it. The stars above Terrelese Prime glimmered faintly, indifferent witnesses to the silent storm brewing below. Commander Alara stood on the bridge of the largest ship, her eyes scanning the holographic display that showed the positions of the Zarnax fleet. The humans were ready now, strengthened by the ancient device, united by grief, courage, and the burning desire for justice. Every life lost in the earlier attacks had become a lesson, every scar a reminder of the cost of survival, and every tear shed had hardened their resolve. The Council believed they had destroyed the humans, believed that fear had broken their spirit, believed that no power in the galaxy could challenge their authority. They were wrong. The first signals of the Zarnax patrols reached the humans, small, unassuming, unaware that they were about to walk into a storm of human ingenuity and precision. Ilara's hand hovered over the command panel, steady and confident. "Remember," she said to her crew, her voice carrying authority and calm fury, "we are not striking blindly. We are precise. Every move matters. Every decision carries the weight of our people, our ancestors, and our future. Today, we show them that humanity cannot be underestimated." The ships glided silently through the shadows of asteroid belts, their engines cloaked, their movements calculated to avoid early detection. Young pilots, once trembling children, now maneuvered with skill and courage, hearts beating in rhythm with the hum of the ships around them. Engineers monitored energy flows, ready to amplify shields and weapons at a moment's notice, while medics and support crews ensured the fleet remained ready for any unexpected attack. And then it began. The first Zarnax patrol approached, its sensors failing to detect the human fleet hidden perfectly in the shadows. Ilara gave the order, her voice cutting through the quiet tension like a blade. "Strike." The humans moved as one. Missiles, carefully modified from mining pods, streaked silently toward the unsuspecting Zarnax vessels. Energy pulses from the ancient device coursed through the human ships, boosting shields and amplifying weapons beyond the Council's understanding. The first explosions erupted in the void, bright flares of light against the darkness of space, illuminating human faces filled with awe, determination, and a hint of fear. Every pilot felt the surge of adrenaline, every crew member sensed the weight of history pressing down upon them, and every human knew that this was more than a battle, it was a statement. The Zarnax fleet faltered. Their patrols were disrupted, communications jammed, and their overconfidence began to waver. Admiral Varnock barked orders furiously, his claws tapping consoles, scales bristling with anxiety he did not fully understand. How is this possible?" he hissed. "They are human. They should have been destroyed. They should have feared us." Yet fear had already taken root. The humans were relentless, striking with intelligence, patience, and a precision born of desperation and determination. Ilara coordinated every maneuver, her mind anticipating enemy reactions, her heart carrying the weight of all the lives lost. Young Kiran, the pilot who had once trembled at the sight of enemy ships, now weaved through asteroids with skill and courage that amazed even his mentors, delivering critical strikes that disabled Zarnax engines and weapon systems. Each victory was not just tactical, it was emotional. Survivors on the fleet cheered quietly, tears welling in their eyes as the tide began to turn. They had survived, trained, adapted, and now they were winning. In the council chambers, whispers of panic spread. Delegates could not comprehend what was happening. Their arrogance had blinded them. They are organized," one muttered, voice shaking. "They have technology, weapons, strategies we cannot predict." Varnock's face turned pale, scales paling as he realized the magnitude of the Council's mistake. "Send reinforcements," he demanded, though even he feared that reinforcements might not be enough. The humans pressed their advantage. Every maneuver was calculated, every attack deliberate, every movement precise. They were no longer reacting, they were dictating the flow of battle. Each explosion, each ship disabled, each Zarnax retreat fueled their determination, proving to the audience that intelligence, courage, and unity could triumph over arrogance, lies, and assumed superiority. On Terrelese Prime, engineers monitored the energy flow from the ancient device, amplifying the fleet's shields and weapons. Pilots coordinated silently, communicating through gestures and prearranged signals, their synchronization flawless. Every human, no matter how young or old, contributed to the assault in some way, making the fleet more than a collection of ships. It was a living embodiment of humanity's resilience, intelligence, and spirit. As the first wave of Zarnak's ships fell, panic spread like wildfire among the remaining vessels. They had underestimated humanity, assumed weakness where strength existed, and now faced the terrifying consequences. The humans did not celebrate recklessly, they honored each strike, remembering those who had fallen, those who had cried, those who had whispered promises in the dark. Every victory was a tribute to them, a reminder that humanity had been wronged, but had not been defeated. Commander Alara stood on the observation deck of her ship, watching the battle unfold with calm intensity. She thought of the past, the ancestors who had fought to preserve humanity, the bloodline that had survived countless challenges, and the lives that had been lost in the Council's arrogance. And she swore silently, a vow burning brighter than the stars themselves, that humanity would not stop, humanity would not falter, and humanity would make the Council remember the cost of lies. Hours passed as the battle raged, yet humans pressed on, their precision, courage, and intelligence overwhelming the Zarnak's patrols. The first major victory was complete. Ships that had once been symbols of fear and oppression now lay disabled, drifting silently in space, proof that the wrong species had been blamed and that arrogance could be punished. On Terralese Prime, the humans cheered quietly, tears streaming down faces hardened by loss, fear, and determination. Children clapped softly, engineers embraced one another, pilots laughed through exhaustion, and every survivor felt the pulse of hope, courage, and justice. The audience feels the emotional weight, the suspense, and the catharsis of humanity's first major victory, a triumph born from pain, strategy, and unyielding spirit. Yet, the humans knew this was only the beginning. The Council would return, stronger, more determined, more arrogant than before. The war was far from over. But for the first time, the humans of Terralese Prime understood their true power, the depth of their resilience, and the unbreakable bond of their species. They had struck first. They had won. And they had sent a message across the galaxy. Blood is stronger than lies, and humanity would not be crushed, silenced, or forgotten. Commander Alara's eyes gleamed with determination as she looked at the horizon of space, the fleet of human ships ready for whatever came next. The battle had shown them what they were capable of, and the galaxy would soon learn that the humans of Terralese Prime were no longer a colony, no longer victims. They were a force to be reckoned with, unstoppable, intelligent, and unyielding. And somewhere far across the stars, the Zarnak's Council began to realize the terrifying truth. They had blamed the wrong species, and now the consequences were unfolding with a precision and ruthlessness they could never have anticipated. The stars above Terralese Prime seemed to burn brighter that night, reflecting the fierce determination of humanity below. Commander Alara stood on the observation deck, her eyes scanning the void of space where the Zarnak's fleet had once patrolled with arrogance and certainty, now a scattered, cautious force. The humans had struck first and won, but Alara knew the Council's pride would not allow them to accept defeat quietly. Every human aboard the ships felt the weight of that knowledge, the responsibility of survival, and the fire of vengeance. Each life lost, each ruin on Terralese Prime, each tear that had fallen in the dark tunnels of their colony, had fueled a determination that now burned hotter than any engine or weapon. Engineers and scientists worked tirelessly, integrating the energy from the ancient device into the fleet systems, amplifying shields, weapons, and communications beyond what the Council could comprehend. Young pilots coordinated with flawless precision, their nerves steeled, their hands steady, their hearts filled with courage forged from pain and loss. The humans were no longer simply defending, they were preparing to escalate, to strike with strategy, patience, and intelligence that no arrogance could anticipate. "We will not stop at surviving," Alara said, her voice carrying over the hum of the fleet. "We will show them the cost of lies. We will make them regret ever believing humans could be blamed falsely and destroyed." Her words reverberated through the fleet, a quiet storm of resolve, igniting a fire in every survivor's heart. The first wave of escalated attacks began quietly, almost imperceptibly. Small squads of ships emerged from hiding, striking supply convoys, disabling patrol drones, and scattering communications relays. Every strike was precise, deliberate, and measured, designed to confuse and frustrate the Council rather than to simply destroy. The humans had learned patience, cunning, and the value of every life, and they wielded these lessons like weapons more powerful than any laser. In orbit above Terralese Prime, Zarnak's ships moved cautiously now, their movements hesitant, their arrogance faltering under the pressure of unexpected intelligence and precision. Reports reached the Council chambers in a flood, each one more troubling than the last. "They are coordinating attacks across multiple vectors," a delegate stammered. "Our patrols are ineffective. Our reinforcements are being intercepted. They anticipate our every move. Admiral Varnok's scales bristled, and his eyes narrowed. Humans, they should not be capable of this. How can they strategize so effectively? They are weak. Yet they are unstoppable. Panic was creeping into the council, a poison they had never felt before, and the humans sensed it. Ilara watched the Xanax from her bridge, her calm gaze masking the storm of emotion within. Every attack they executed was not only tactical, it was personal. Every disabled ship, every disrupted patrol, every supply convoy destroyed was a reminder that the council had judged the wrong species, that lies could not suppress blood, courage, and truth. On Terralese Prime, survivors on the ground coordinated with the fleet, guiding attacks, providing intelligence, and preparing for any contingency. Even children played roles, carrying messages, monitoring sensors, and helping medics. Every human, regardless of age or status, contributed to the growing force, making it clear that survival had evolved into mastery. Grief had transformed into purpose, and fear had become courage. As the humans escalated their attacks, the emotional weight pressed heavily on Ilara. She thought of those lost, the friends, the families, the innocents, and she let herself feel their absence, their memories feeding her determination. She whispered their names silently, a vow echoing in her mind and across the fleet. Every strike, every strategy, every life saved would honor them, and the council would pay for their arrogance. Battles raged in the void, small at first but growing, each engagement teaching humans more about their enemy, and the Xanax learning too late that underestimating humanity was a fatal mistake. Shields flared, weapons fired with precision, and the humans moved like a single organism, coordinated, intelligent, unstoppable. The council's panic became palpable, their arrogance cracking under the pressure. Delegates argued, orders conflicted, and Varnok's temper flared, but nothing could restore the certainty they had once held. Humanity was proving, with every tactical maneuver, that strength was not measured by scale or firepower alone, it was measured by courage, intelligence, and unity. In one decisive strike, a squadron led by Kieran intercepted a Xanax supply convoy, disabling engines, destroying weapons arrays, and cutting communications. The squad returned to orbit with minimal casualties, their faces pale but triumphant. The humans on Terralese Prime watched in awe and relief, their hopes swelling with each victory. Even the youngest whispered prayers of thanks, understanding instinctively that humanity had taken control of its destiny. Ilara stood silently, observing the growing chaos among the Xanax fleet. She allowed herself a brief moment to feel pride, tempered immediately by the knowledge that the war was far from over. Yet, in that pride, she found clarity and courage. Humans had endured death, destruction, and lies. They had risen from ruins, adapted, and now, armed with knowledge, skill, and ancient power, they were unstoppable. The audience feels the suspense, the thrill, and the emotional weight of these moments. Humans, underestimated, oppressed, and attacked unjustly, now rising stronger, more intelligent, and more fearless than ever. Every strike, every maneuver, every sacrifice echoed with the message that blood is stronger than lies. As night fell over Terralese Prime, the human fleet regrouped, energy flowing through every ship, shields strengthened, weapons charged, and hearts unbroken. Ilara looked across the crew, across the fleet, across the survivors on the planet, and she whispered to herself, "We are not weak. We are human. And the galaxy will learn that lies cannot destroy us." And far away, in the Xanax council chambers, whispers of fear and doubt spread like wildfire. Humans had survived the first attack. Humans had won the first battle. Now humans had escalated, striking with precision and intelligence that no empire had anticipated. For the first time, the council realized that they had underestimated not just the strength of a species, but the unbreakable will of humanity. Commander Ilara's gaze hardened, her determination shining brighter than the stars above. The humans were ready to escalate even further, to strike deeper, to ensure that the council would remember, forever, the cost of lies, arrogance, and false blame. Humanity had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same. The void of space above Terralese Prime had become a battlefield, silent and deadly, yet humming with the quiet rhythm of human strategy. Commander Ilara stood on the observation deck of the flagship, eyes scanning the approaching Xanax forces. The Council's arrogance had blinded them to the rising storm, and now their fleet, once confident and untouchable, approached a force they could not anticipate, a force born from loss, courage, and the ancient power awakened beneath the planet. Every human on the fleet carried memories of the past, the friends who had died in the first attacks, the families destroyed, the colonies razed by lies. Each heartbeat carried both grief and determination, every breath fueled by the fire of vengeance and survival. "This is it," Ilara whispered to herself, her voice steady, but her heart pounding. This is the moment they realized the cost of blaming the wrong species. The Zarnax fleet approached cautiously, their sensors picking up the human vessels but unable to detect the full strength of what awaited them. They assumed superiority, as they always had, as if arrogance alone could secure victory. But humans had learned, adapted, and now wielded a power that the Council had long forgotten existed. Energy flowed from the ancient device beneath Terrelese Prime, amplifying shields, boosting weapons, and linking every ship with intelligence and precision beyond the comprehension of the enemy. Young pilots navigated asteroid fields with flawless skill, their small ships darting like lightning, striking weak points, and disappearing before the Zarnax could react. Engineers monitored energy flows, adjusting outputs, and enhancing systems in real time. Medics and support crews ensured the fleet was ready for prolonged engagement, every human contributing to the effort with unwavering focus. And then the first strike came. Kiran's squadron emerged from the shadows, slamming into the flank of the Zarnax formation. Missiles streaked silently through the void, and energy pulses from the ancient device disabled shields, overloading systems, and sending ships spiraling into darkness. Explosions erupted, flaring against the stars, illuminating faces filled with awe, fear, and exhilaration. The humans had learned patience, and now they used it to devastating effect. Each attack was precise, deliberate, and emotionally charged, a tribute to every life lost and every promise whispered in the dark. On board the flagship, Ilara coordinated movements with calm intensity, anticipating the enemy's reactions before they occurred. Every maneuver was calculated, every strike intentional, every action carried the weight of survival, justice, and the unbreakable will of humanity. The Zarnax fleet faltered. Their confidence shattered, their patrols confused, their arrogance replaced by fear. Admiral Varnock barked orders furiously, claws tapping consoles, scales bristling with tension he could not control. "They should not be able to do this. How is this possible?" he roared, his voice shaking despite the armor of pride. The Council watched helplessly as their fleet was dismantled systematically, overwhelmed not by numbers but by skill, intelligence, and unyielding determination. Each human strike carried both strategy and emotion. Pilots shouted names of lost friends before launching attacks, engineers whispered prayers as they amplified energy weapons, and even children who monitored sensors understood their part in the reckoning. On the surface of Terrelese Prime, survivors monitored the battle with bated breath, hearts swelling with pride and fear. Every successful strike brought relief and a deep, almost painful joy. Humanity was proving, with each victory, that lies could not crush truth, that blood was stronger than deceit, and that unity, courage, and intelligence could overcome any empire. Hours passed as the decisive engagement continued. Ships weaved through debris fields, coordinated strikes disabled weapons arrays, and energy pulses from the ancient device amplified human firepower to levels unimaginable to the Zarnax. Ilara watched as the enemy's forces fractured, their fleet falling into chaos, their formations collapsing under the precision and intelligence of humans who had once been underestimated. The emotional weight pressed on her as she observed the carnage of battle. She thought of those who had died, the families who had been lost, and the sacrifices that had led to this moment. And yet, she felt pride, hope, and a fierce joy, knowing that every strike honored the fallen and defended the living. Finally, the Zarnax began to retreat, their arrogance shattered, their forces broken, their council forced to acknowledge a truth they had ignored for centuries. Humanity had struck decisively, strategically, and emotionally, proving that no lie, no false accusation, and no underestimation could destroy them. The humans cheered quietly aboard their ships, tears streaking faces hardened by grief and battle. Children hugged engineers, pilots embraced medics, and every survivor on Terrelese Prime felt the surge of pride and relief that comes from enduring impossible odds and prevailing. Commander Ilara stood on the observation deck, her cloak fluttering in the artificial breeze, her eyes reflecting the glimmer of stars and the fires of distant battle. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "We are human. We endure. We fight. We survive. Blood is stronger than lies. And now, they will never forget it." Far across the galaxy, in the council chambers, whispers of panic and disbelief spread. The Zarnax Council, once confident, now faced the terrifying reality of their mistake. They had blamed the wrong species, attacked unjustly, and now were paying the price with precision, intelligence, and the courage of humans who refused to be defeated. Humanity's decisive strikes had shifted the balance, proving that even a small fleet, armed with courage, ingenuity, and the power of their ancestors, could challenge an empire. And on Terrelese Prime, as humans watched the remnants of the Zarnax fleet retreat into the darkness, a new emotion filled their hearts: hope. Not hope born of survival alone, but hope born of justice, of revenge tempered by strategy, and of a species awakening to its full potential. Ilara's gaze hardened, determination blazing brighter than the stars around her. This was only the beginning. The humans had proven their strength, their intelligence, and their resolve. The council would return, no doubt, but humanity was ready. And the audience feels the full emotional and suspenseful weight of the moment. The underdog, underestimated, oppressed, and attacked unjustly, had risen, fought, and triumphed. Humanity had awakened fully, and the galaxy would never be the same. The blood of humans, stronger than lies, pulsed through the survivors' veins, through the ships, and through the heart of every person who had endured, survived, and now struck back. And Commander Ilara knew, deep in her bones, that this was the moment the Zarnax would never forget, the moment they learned the true strength of the species they had tried to destroy. The void of space shimmered with distant stars, but above Terrelese Prime, the darkness was alive with the tension of battle, a tension that crackled through every human heart. Commander Ilara stood on the bridge of the flagship, her eyes steady, her mind calculating, yet inside, a storm of emotion raged. Humanity had survived attacks that were meant to annihilate them. They had endured loss, fear, and destruction. They had awakened the ancient power of their ancestors, and now, the galaxy was beginning to see the truth. Humans were not weak, and they would not be crushed by lies. Every human aboard the fleet carried memories of pain, grief, and injustice. Every scar, every tear, every whispered promise to the fallen fueled their resolve. Today was not just about survival, it was about justice, vengeance, and proving to the galaxy that blood was stronger than lies. The Zarnax fleet approached, its ships larger and more numerous, yet their confidence faltered. The arrogance that had long defined the council was replaced by unease, fear, and the realization that their previous attacks had failed. Admiral Varnock barked orders, but even he hesitated, sensing that the humans had grown far beyond what he had predicted. "They are organized," a delegate muttered, voice trembling. "They are stronger than we imagined. How can a single species stand against us like this?" The humans struck first. Using energy amplified by the ancient device beneath Terrelese Prime, their ships moved with precision and strategy. Shields flared, weapons fired, and every attack was deliberate, aimed not only to disable but to send a message. Small squadrons darted through asteroid fields, striking patrols and supply convoys, while larger ships, augmented with ancient power, unleashed blasts that disrupted the Zarnax formations. Kiran piloted one of the leading ships, his hands steady despite the pounding of his heart. He thought of the friends who had fallen, the families destroyed, and the homes lost to lies and arrogance. Every strike he launched carried the weight of memory and vengeance. The humans moved like a single organism, their coordination flawless. Engineers amplified weapons and shields in real time, medics prepared for the few casualties, and the youngest scouts relayed critical intelligence with precision that amazed even the oldest officers. Commander Ilara's voice carried over the bridge: focus. Precision. We are humanity, and we endure. Every move is a statement. Every strike is proof. Show them what they underestimated. The humans' attacks were not only physical but psychological. Each successful strike sent waves of panic through the Zarnax fleet. Ships faltered, formations broke, and the council's confidence crumbled. Varnock's claws shook as he slammed the console. This cannot be happening. They are too coordinated. Too intelligent. How can they anticipate everything we do? Far across the galaxy, other Zarnax forces heard the reports and began to question their council's judgment. Whispers of doubt spread through their ranks. The humans had turned survival into mastery, grief into strategy, and fear into courage. On Terrelese Prime, survivors watched the fleet's movements through tactical displays, their hearts swelling with pride and awe. Even children, hiding in reinforced tunnels, understood the significance of every attack, the power of human resilience, and the hope that burned brighter with every victory. The battle intensified. Human ships moved in unpredictable patterns, using ancient energy pulses to disable enemy shields, confuse navigation systems, and amplify their own attacks. Each strike was emotionally charged, a tribute to the lives lost, a declaration that humanity would not bow to lies. The Council's panic grew. Orders were contradictory. Strategies faltered, and confidence dissolved. Humanity's intelligence, courage, and unity had outmatched the arrogance and firepower of the Zarnax fleet. Elara felt a surge of emotion as she watched the chaos unfold. She thought of every sacrifice, every loss, every tear, and she whispered to herself and to the galaxy, "This is our moment. This is proof. We are human. We endure. We fight. We survive." The humans pressed their advantage further, striking directly at command ships, disabling communications, and forcing the Council to witness the power they had dismissed. Energy beams from the ancient device amplified every human attack, creating flares of light that tore through enemy hulls and disrupted systems beyond repair. The humans' courage and strategy became unstoppable. Even the most hardened warriors on the fleet felt awe and fear of the humans' determination and intelligence. Hours passed as humans systematically dismantled the remaining Zarnax forces. Each victory was quiet but emotionally overwhelming. Engineers hugged pilots, medics smiled through tears, and children clapped softly, understanding that their species had finally shown the galaxy its full strength. The Council watched helplessly as their empire faltered. They had judged the wrong species, blamed humans for lies, and now faced a reckoning that their arrogance had invited. For the first time, they understood that strength was not measured by numbers or weapons alone, but by courage, intelligence, unity, and the will to survive. Commander Elara gazed at the remnants of the Zarnax fleet retreating into the darkness. She allowed herself a brief moment of pride, tempered by the knowledge that the war was far from over. But she knew one truth clearly: humanity had awakened, proven its strength, and declared that lies would never defeat them. The audience feels the suspense and emotional intensity as humans, underestimated and oppressed, now dominate the battlefield with skill, courage, and ancestral power. Every strike, every maneuver, every decision resonates with the message that blood is stronger than lies, and humanity will not be silenced. The ancient device beneath Terrali's Prime pulsed with energy, reflecting the strength of humanity, amplifying courage and intelligence, connecting every ship, every mind, every heart. The humans had turned survival into power, grief into strategy, fear into courage, and vengeance into justice. And somewhere across the galaxy, the Zarnax Council realized, too late, that they had unleashed a species that could not be controlled, underestimated, or destroyed. Humanity had risen, and the galaxy would never forget it. Commander Elara's eyes burned with determination as she whispered to herself, "They will never forget. We are human. We endure. We fight. We survive. Blood is stronger than lies, and we will prove it to the galaxy." The human fleet, alive with energy and purpose, moved in unison, ready to take the next step in their campaign, a campaign born of loss, courage, and the unbreakable will of a species that refused to be conquered. And far above, the stars bore witness to a species awakening fully, a species that would shape the fate of the galaxy, and a species whose blood, courage, and truth were stronger than any lie the Zarnax could ever tell. The galaxy held its breath. Above Terrali's Prime, the human fleet gathered, shimmering with the energy of the ancient device, alive with the courage, grief, and unyielding will of every survivor who had endured the Council's lies. Commander Elara stood at the forefront, her eyes scanning the vast expanse where the Zarnax Council's main fleet hovered, massive, arrogant, and blind to the force that now faced them. Silence filled the bridge, heavy with anticipation. Every human aboard felt the weight of history pressing down, felt the grief of the lost, the rage of betrayal, and the burning determination to ensure the Council would never underestimate humanity again. The first strike had tested them. The second had proven their precision. And now, the final assault would seal the truth: humans could not be defeated, manipulated, or silenced. "This is for every life they tried to erase," Elara whispered, her voice calm but fierce. "This is for our homes, our families, our people. We strike with intelligence, we strike with courage, and we strike with justice. Humanity will be remembered." The fleet moved as one, a single organism powered by determination, blood, and the pulse of the ancient device beneath Terrali's Prime. Weapons flared, shields rippled with energy, and every system amplified with a precision that the Council had never imagined. Young pilots darted through asteroid belts, threading between enemy fire, striking critical engines and weapon systems. Engineers coordinated from the planet's surface, feeding real-time data to every ship, ensuring that every move was calculated, every attack maximized. On board the flagship, Ilara's hands moved with deliberate precision across the control panels, guiding attacks, predicting enemy responses, and weaving a strategy that combined technology, emotion, and ancestral wisdom. The first wave hit with devastating accuracy. Zarnak's ships, once symbols of terror, erupted in flares of fire, drifting silently as systems failed, engines melted, and crews were thrown into chaos. Every human aboard felt a surge of emotion, grief for the fallen, pride for the living, and a fierce joy at seeing justice done. The council panicked. Alarms blared, consoles flashed with critical failures, and delegates shouted orders, conflicting and desperate. Stop them! Destroy them! Varnock roared, claws slamming against the console, scales bristling in fear. But every order failed. Humans anticipated, adapted, and struck again with intelligence and courage the council could not counter. Ilara watched the chaos unfold with calm determination, feeling the weight of every loss, every scar, every tear that had led to this moment. And yet, she felt hope, pure, unbreakable, unstoppable hope. The humans pressed their advantage, moving deeper into the council's formation. Squadrons disabled command ships, communications were disrupted, and the council's arrogance crumbled completely. The Zarnak's fleet was no longer a threat, it was a cage of panic and fear, bound by the precision and courage of humans who refused to be destroyed. On Terralese Prime, survivors watched with bated breath. Every explosion, every disabled ship, every retreating patrol was a victory, but also a solemn reminder of what had been lost. Engineers, medics, and scouts worked tirelessly, ensuring the fleet remained strong, amplifying the power of the ancient device, connecting every ship, and feeding the humans will into every system. Kieran, piloting one of the lead ships, felt tears burn his eyes. He remembered friends lost, children saved, and families destroyed. And yet, in that moment, he felt pride, strength, and unity unlike anything before. Every strike he launched carried the weight of history, the promise of justice, and the unbreakable courage of humanity. The climax approached. Ilara gave the order, calm and resolute, focus all power on the Council's flagship. End this. Show them the cost of lies, of arrogance, of false blame. Energy surged through every conduit, every weapon, every shield, amplified by the ancient device beneath Terralese Prime. The humans moved in perfect synchronization, a symphony of strategy, courage, and emotional intensity. The Council's flagship shuddered as weapons struck with unstoppable force, shields flickering, engines failing, and panic consuming every officer aboard. Varnock's voice trembled, scales paling, as he realized the full scope of their failure. Impossible, humans cannot, they should not, but it was too late. Humanity had mastered the battlefield, amplified by grief, courage, and the ancient legacy of their ancestors. The final strike struck true. Energy flares erupted across the flagship, systems overloaded, and the command vessel fell silent, drifting helplessly into the void. The remaining Zarnak's ships fled in disarray, their arrogance shattered, their fleet broken, their council humiliated and powerless. The humans had won. Silence followed the final impact, broken only by the quiet hum of human ships, alive with energy, determination, and the pulse of the device that had awakened their ancestors' power. Tears streaked the faces of humans aboard every ship. Children clutched survivors, engineers embraced pilots, medics wept quietly, and every human felt the surge of relief, pride, and unyielding triumph. Commander Ilara stood on the bridge of the flagship, looking at the remnants of the Zarnak's fleet retreating into the darkness. Her voice, calm but fierce, echoed across the bridge and through the fleet. We endured. We survived. We fought. We triumphed. Blood is stronger than lies, and humanity will never be forgotten. On Terralese Prime, survivors emerged from their shelters, raising hands in silent tribute to the courage, intelligence, and unity that had delivered victory. The ancient device hummed with energy, its glow reflecting in the eyes of every human, symbolizing power, resilience, and justice. Far across the galaxy, whispers spread among remaining Zarnak's forces and the Council. They had blamed the wrong species, attacked unjustly, and now faced the consequences. Humanity had proven that strength is not measured by firepower or arrogance but by courage, intelligence, unity, and the will to survive. Commander Ilara allowed herself a brief smile, tempered with grief, remembering those who had fallen but knowing their sacrifice had not been in vain. Humanity had awakened fully, had struck decisively, and now the galaxy understood a truth long ignored: humans could not be crushed, deceived, or destroyed. The audience feels the final emotional weight and suspense. Humans, underestimated, oppressed, and attacked unjustly, had risen stronger, more intelligent, and more fearless than ever. Every strike had been a tribute, every victory a promise, every heart aboard every ship a testament to the unbreakable spirit of humanity. And as the fleet gathered above Terrali's prime, energy pulsing, hearts united, and courage burning brighter than any star, Commander Alara spoke one final time, her voice carrying across the void of space: "We are human. We endure. We fight. We survive. Blood is stronger than lies. And the galaxy will remember us forever." The stars themselves seemed to shine brighter, reflecting the awakening of a species that could no longer be ignored, a species that had turned grief into power, fear into courage, and oppression into victory. Humanity had claimed its place among the stars, not as victims, but as guardians, warriors, and unstoppable forces. And in that moment, the galaxy understood the truth: blood is stronger than lies, and humans will never be underestimated again.